What's good, my dear language learning masters? Welcome to Natural Languages and welcome to a new interview of the Language Input Podcast. And today I'm going to have Beniko from Japan on the show. And she's going to tell us about her experience as a language teacher, language student herself, her experience with the different languages and as a researcher as well. So, just wonderful episode that I really believe you're going to enjoy a lot. So yeah, let's get right into it. Let's go. So, hi Beniko.
Yeah.
And welcome to the podcast.
Okay.
And
sure.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I remember meeting you in Ajan. I remember one of your presentations about story listening, and we'll get into it in a moment. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about your experience when it comes to languages. Both as a teacher, learner, researcher, whatever you want to tell us about.
Okay. See, I am Japanese, and English is my foreign language. And I began to learn English when I was 12 years old at a public junior high school. And so I didn't know anything about English. I knew Roman alphabets, and we knew how to write ABC alphabets, but I never heard English before. Okay, I never seen a foreign people before, American native speakers before. It's like a language from the aliens language. It's it's an alien language. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
And so. Okay, yeah, well, but anyway, I was interested in this language, in English, and I had a good English teacher in the junior high school, and I did well on tests because I liked what I was doing. I liked to study English, and so I did okay. And but I noticed that I was one of those who were, I was good, but most kids didn't do very well in English. And okay, so I was okay in English. And then when I went to university, I majored in German. And then I went to Germany for about 10 months and came back to the university. And then I noticed that I spoke German much better than my classmates. And my classmates were much smarter than I was, and they studied much harder than I did. But then I spoke better than they. And I took this part-time position at the Winter Olympics. It was in 1972 in Japan. And they hired me as an interpreter in German for the Olympics. And then my friends, my classmates who studied much harder than I did and much smarter than I was, didn't get the job. And when I worked there, I got paid pretty well. Like for 2 weeks, I think I got paid like $600. It was 1972. And those days, Japanese salaryman was getting $200 a month. Yeah, the monthly salary was $200. But I worked for 2 weeks and I got $600. And then I thought, this is not fair. This is not fair. See, I had a father who could afford to send me to Germany for almost 1 year when $1 cost 360 yen.
Mhm.
Right now, $1 costs 120 yen. Okay, 3 times as much those days, 50 years ago. 50 years ago. It was after the war in
Mhm.
1970, okay? And so I was lucky enough to have a father or family who could afford to send me to Europe from Japan.
Right.
They could afford to have me stay in America, in Germany for 10 months, paying the tuition and the living expense.
Mhm.
And then I came home and I spoke German. I could speak German. Ich konnte auf Deutsch ziemlich gut sprechen. So those days I could speak German pretty well. And so, but then I thought that was not fair. Just because I was in a position or in the circumstance or the environment
Mhm.
where I could get to go there, but then there were much smarter people and much more diligent people around me, but they couldn't achieve that level of the language because they didn't have money.
Mhm.
And that's not fair, I thought, and then I went to America and got married. And I stayed in America and I got a master's degree and came back to Japan. And, I became a college teacher. I was employed at a university. That's only because I had a master's degree from American University. Okay. But my friends who were much smarter and worked much harder in Japan couldn't get a college position because it's just not fair. Okay. And then I began to work at the different places, vocational school and in the university. And then I saw that the students were still doing the same thing, which I was doing like 30 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever. The same grammar translation approach, and they were just memorizing words, and they were doing, they were doing a role play, and teachers were correcting them, and then they were not getting anything, they were not getting better in English at all, but then they got credits and they graduated, and then they didn't speak English, they couldn't read, they couldn't listen, they couldn't do anything, but then they had this degree and went out, to the society. And then Japan did not really require the people to be able to use English those days, like 30, 40, 50 years ago. So it was okay. It was like a hobby, It used to be like studying French was a hobby, okay? Mm-hmm. And so it didn't really matter if you could read or write or speak or anything, and so, but when I came back and began to teach English, I felt like I was just stealing money. The students, the school assigned me to use a textbook. And then I went into a classroom, and the students those days were much more diligent and dedicated. And so they would come to school with a new textbook, a new notebook, and a new dictionary, and then they will be, ready to start studying English. And then I come in with this difficult textbook in English, and then we are doing the grammar translation approach. And then the students, for the first month or so, they really, really study hard, but then it's too difficult. So they start losing interest, or they start losing hope. And then they stop coming to class, or they will stop doing the homework. And then they would start sleeping in the classroom. And then so I would say something like, Mr. Tanaka, please stand up and read the first paragraph and translate this into Japanese. And then they would say something like, well, I looked up the words, but I'm not really sure if I can translate it. And so I said, well, try it. And they will do it. But then they do it really badly. And then I would say, all right, I will do it again for you. And so I will translate. And then what happens is everybody starts picking up a pencil. They start writing the Japanese translation, which I was given. And then this happens all the time.
Right.
And at the end of the semester, the English, the reading class will be like, well, the test will be from the textbook. And so from page 2 to page 23, and then you have to be able to translate these sentences. And then what happens is that the copy goes around among the students.
Correct.
I bet everywhere the same thing is happening. And then what happens is that students memorizes, English sentence and Japanese sentence. And when they, see this one, this is the Japanese translation. And so that's how they get the credit. But what they did was during the class, they did the Japanese dictation. And for the test, they memorized Japanese.
Correct.
And then they passed the English class and got the credit and left the school. And I just couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand this. And then I heard about graded readers. Graded readers, extensive reading. And I began to do it. And then it was very good. It really worked. And then the next year was in 1984. No, 1983. And then in 1984, I came back to Japan in 1981. In 1984, Dr. Krashen came to Japan, and he gave a talk on the power of reading. And it was at a university called Waseda University in Tokyo. It was a conference by JOLT, Japan Association for Language Teachers, or Language Teaching or something, JOLT. And I went there and I listened to him talk about this power of reading. And I'm telling you, it was like the thunder roar. Thunder roared, and lightning struck, and I almost fell off the chair when I was listening to him talk. And I went, oh my gosh. And I went to the publisher's display area, and I bought this book. I'll show you. This is a book. This is a book that I bought in 1984. Second language acquisition and second language learning. And guess what? Right here, I get his signature. I went to the publisher's display area and I got this book, and I went over to Dr. Krashen and I said, please give me autograph, And he goes, and there it says, I'm telling you, this is what he said. With best wishes for lots of comprehensible input and a low affective filter. Stephen Krashen. Okay. And you know what I did? I made a copy of this. Put it on the wall above my desk, and I always looked at it. It was in 1984. And then in 1984, and I was doing extensive reading. I was having the students read lots and lots of books. And guess what? Those days, Japanese students never read a single book completely. They might have translated, like, if they get a textbook like this, they might read like first 10 pages, okay? But the rest of the pages, the book, they don't read, because they just read very carefully, intensive reading. But I began to do extensive reading with this graded readers, and then students began to read a lot more books. And it was a miracle to me that students read books, completed a book, and then more books and more books. And so these students, to our surprise, the school's surprise, these kids passed this standardized test that we have in Japan, which was very difficult for the students in the past years. But then these students who were reading books passed this test. And so guess what I did? I went to New York to the TESOL conference in 1985, where Dr. Krashen was going to give a featured talk or a keynote speaker or something. And I went there with my data. Okay, I went there with my data, and when he was going up the podium, I went over there and I said, Dr. Krashen, I said, I have some data to show you. And he says, okay, he says, I'll talk to you after my talk. And so I listened to him talk. And after his talk, Dr. Gratian says, well, come to the executive lounge, we'll talk there. And so I go up there with him, and he says, sit down. And so I sit down in the lobby, and he gave me a glass of orange juice, and he says, well, show me your data. And so I said, I was going to show him my data. And then he said, so now tell me, he said, how many books did your student read? So I proudly said 8 books. Yeah. Japanese students never read a complete book before, but they read 8 books. They read 8 books. And I was proud. And so I went over there and I said to this guy, Stephen Krashen, I said, my students read 8 books. Do you know what he said?
8 books throughout the year, right?
No, 1 semester.
Oh, yeah.
1 semester, 8 books. And then they had a test before the semester, and they read 8 books. 8 books would be like, let's see, well, like 500 pages, just 500 pages, okay? But 500 pages when they were reading only 10 pages before with intensive reading.
Right.
And so, and then I said 8 books, yeah? And then he said, I don't need to look at your data, he said. And I said, why? And he said, 8 books won't do anything. But I thought in my head, but my students passed the test. But he said, nah, 8 books is not enough. So I asked him, how many books do you think that my students should read? And he said, hundreds of books. And I'm going, are you kidding? Japanese students will not read hundreds of books, So, but then I said, okay, and I went home from New York. I went back to Japan. And then after that, I thought, how am I going to have my students read hundreds of books? And I tried a lot of different things. I gave a pep talk every hour, every class, every class. At the beginning of the class, I would say, well, you've got to read books. If you read books, this and that. I gave a pep talk, and the students were watching me and go, okay, we'll read books, And then I said, you must read about 1,000 pages per semester. Yeah. And they go, okay. And so we were reading books in the classroom all the time. And then, interestingly, my students began to read 1,000 pages per semester. Some people started reading 1,500 pages. Okay. And then I began to go to a graduate school again in Japan to learn how to do a research using statistics. And then I began to do a lot, I made my own closed test and all that stuff. And I evaluated their progress. And interestingly, every semester, the mean score, average score went up and up and up. And then the students began to do well on the standardized test. And I'm going, wow. And so that's when I began to write papers. And, but there are lots of different things. What I wanted to say, I think I just wandered off. See, when I was doing this, my colleagues were quite critical of me because they were doing intensive reading, yeah? And then they were doing grammar translations and stuff like that. And they were saying, oh, there are, the intensive reading develops accuracy, and extensive reading develops fluency. And they said, we need both, they said. But the theory, Dr. Gratian's theory says, input alone is sufficient. Yeah, input alone develops both fluency and accuracy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you don't need intense reading. And so that's what I have been, and then, okay. Yeah, and also what I wanted to say, what I started, how to say, what I wanted to say was that I don't think it's a good idea. No, it's not the way, how do you say it? When it's okay. I have, if I have 30 students in my class,
Yeah.
I want everybody to reach the goal. I don't want just the 5 kids to reach the goal and forget the rest. You know, I want everybody to go up. And maybe you can. It's impossible to have everybody. You know, maybe 1 or 2 might not be able to do that, but and then maybe they may not be able to do it in 2 years, like in junior college, 2 years. Some kids might need 3 years and 4 years, but at least I want somebody. I want the method that can I want the method with which I can help almost everybody. Okay. And so the reason why I say this is because I thought it was very unfair that I could do better than other people because my parents had money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so lots of things happened. And now, you know, after 35 years, okay, what I have now is story listening, and I don't call it storytelling. I call it story listening to make a clear difference between storytelling and story listening.
Uh-huh.
And then I do not call what I do extensive reading anymore either, because when they, you know, lots of people do extensive reading, but what they do is extensive reading plus comprehension questions and corrective feedback.
Right.
Yeah. Or, you know, target the words or target this and target that with extensive reading. And that's what I'm saying. When people use stories, yes, comprehensible input, but then you target this and that and this and that. And so, but in fact, you know, I was doing the same thing. I was telling a story, but then I was targeting words and I was teaching the grammar, and I was giving them tests and I was grading them and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But then one day in 2004 or 2003, I was so proud that I thought I was doing what Stephen Cratchit was saying. You know, I thought that was, you know, I was doing, you know, right, just right. But then Dr. Cratchit criticized me. And I don't understand why he doesn't criticize other people when other people are doing the same thing. But he criticized me. He said, Beniko, what you're doing is not what I'm saying. Huh? You know, what am I doing wrong? And he says, you are focusing on forms.
Right. What
you're doing is not input alone. And I'm going, really? You know, and then he says, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And what do I have to do? He says, don't pre-teach vocabulary. Don't question. Don't do any test. Okay? And don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I'm going, you just want me to tell stories, that's all? And he says, yes. Yeah? But then see, I began to notice I cannot just tell stories to make it comprehensible. And then I began to do all these different things. And then what I found was this, what he was talking about in 1982, comprehension aiding supplementation. When we tell a story, we do lots of different things to make it comprehensible, make it interesting, and make it rich, make it abundant. And that's what we call now optimal input, not comprehensible input. He says comprehensible input alone is not enough. You've got to have abundant input, rich input, and interesting input. These 4 characteristics must be present at the same time. Oh, he never says must be. When I say this, must be, you know. And he goes, no. It's a good idea to have those 4 things together. Okay, and that's not enough either. It has to be low affective filter. You cannot pressure kids.
Right.
Yeah, and then what happens is that when you don't do any testing, when you don't do targeting, you don't expect anything from them, but you just have them listen to the story and enjoy. What happens is that they acquire much faster and more effectively.
Correct. Yeah, because if you're testing them or asking them questions afterwards, they're gonna be tensed all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So the affective filter goes way up. Right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's not only it. See, the thing is, when I want you to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I really want you to understand this because I think it's very, very important. And this is what Dr. Grasham was saying in 2003. You know, when you have a list of the words or a list of the questions you ask, yeah, that's your agenda.
Mm.
Yeah, but then the students might be understanding other things other than what you want to test them. And so it's not fair. You want to know these things, whether they understood these things, but they might be interested in learning some other things. They might have learned something else.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because that's those words that you're targeting, that's your preconceived idea of what you think they need, but it might not be it, right? Okay. Yeah.
Because when you tell a story, when you have 30 kids in your classroom, even when they have taken a class from the same teacher with the same textbooks, everybody's knowledge or the understanding of I don't know, the number of words that they know are different. Even when they have studied 1 year, 2 years, 3 years with the same teacher, with the same textbook, student A might know like 300 words, and the other one might know only 150 words. Right. And then the words are different, the number of words are different, and the level of the understanding of each word is different. Yeah, and so even when you have 30 kids with the same age, they're all different. The words that they know are different. The level of the understanding is different. And so you start telling a story, and then you think that the kids should understand these words, but then maybe 1/3 of the kids understand it. 1/3 of the kids might know a little bit. The other 1/3 may not know it at all. And so you try to tell a story with using different kind of synonyms and antonyms and descriptions and stuff like that. And then you think that the kids should understand, but for them, some of them, it is I plus N or I plus 1. And therefore, when you start bringing in new words, more words, and then it becomes so incomprehensible. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. That's why when you tell a story, it has to be, in my head, I should be using the words 99.5% comprehensible. And even then I do it, there are lots and lots of words that they haven't heard before. They are not ready to acquire and stuff like that.
Right. But that's when, drawings and pictures come into play, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's really helpful. Okay. And what's I mean, you talked about it, but what's the difference between story listening and storytelling?
Oh, good question. I love that. Okay. Oh, I love that question. When people do storytelling, I think what they do is they memorize a story and tell a story. Yeah. Once upon a time, there was an old man. He had a wife, and he and his wife lived by the sea. And then they, whatever. Okay. So they just, remember the story and they tell a story. Okay. Story listening is completely different. Story listening is like this. You never say, once upon a time, there was a fisherman. You don't say that. Once upon a time, there was a man. We start introducing the small piece of information. Once upon a time, there was a man. He was an old man. He was 75 years old. He had wrinkles around his eyes. He had beard around his whatever the jaw, and he had okay. He had let's see. He was a poor man. He didn't have enough money, and he lived in a very small house. And he walked with a cane, you know. And then you start having the students having this image of this man.
Right.
And then say he lived with his wife, and his wife was 85 years old. She was 10 years older than he, yeah, and things like that. And then before you start telling the story, you do this pre-story about the characters, so that they will be ready to start understanding the content of the story. Yeah.
You get more into detail. Okay.
Yeah, that's what one of the things that we do. And another thing that there's a difference between storytelling and story listening is that when you want to, you just don't say he was a cruel man. You don't say that. You explain more about what cruel is. Yeah. And when you do this, you use different words, use synonyms and antonyms and descriptions and stuff like that. And then students understand it better about the word cruel. Okay. And then when you want to use a word like entice, you know, it's a difficult word, entice. Yeah. I don't. Dr. Krishna, I talked about this the other day. It was interesting, but anyway, I say, you know, when you tell a story, Grimm Brothers fairy tales, there are lots of stories where the men betray women. Yeah, betrothed. There's this young man who is engaged to a girl. He goes off and he falls in love with somebody else and forgets about this girl. And he's going to marry this girl, you know, that type of thing. But then when you tell a story like this, and there are lots of interesting words in the text, like treachery, betrayal, what else? Devotion, entice, you know, lure. Lots of interesting the words, yeah. And then I love teaching these words. I mean, using these, I shouldn't say teaching, but using these words in the story so that the students will start understanding the scene, significance of the scene, the betrayal scene type of thing. And then so then when I want to use a word entice, and then I might have an example story to explain about the word entice. Or I have an example story separate from the main story. For example, I say, you know, like if I want to use the word abandon, what I always do is like this. I say, here is Keiko. You know, this Keiko is a Japanese woman's name, Keiko. Keiko has a boyfriend, Taro. Keiko and Taro are very like each other very much, and they are good friends, good lovers. One day, Keiko and Taro are walking in downtown Osaka, and then she meets her girlfriend. The girlfriend can be anybody, Kazuko. Okay, and so Keiko says, "Hi, Kazuko. This is my boyfriend Taro." And then Kazuko winks at the Taro. And then these two goes say, "Well, it was nice meeting you, and thank you, and goodbye." And then a week later, when Keiko was walking in downtown, she sees Kazuko and Taro together, and then Keiko says, "What are you doing, Taro?" And Taro says, "I'm sorry, I love Kazuko better than you." And she goes, "What?" And then she says, "Goodbye," and he runs away. now he abandoned Cuzco, Keiko, I was saying.
Yeah.
And then when I do this, students understand what abandon means, yeah? And then that's the inserted example story.
Right.
Something like that. So when I do story listening, I do all, the description of the characters at the beginning of the story, and I give examples within the story, related story, and then I give example completely different from the story, and then do these things, and then that's different from the storytelling, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I use synonyms and antonyms and definitions, and I explain. I do make my own comments when I'm telling a story, and also I draw pictures. That's a non-linguistic supplementation, drawings and clear speech. I don't speak this fast, I speak very slowly, and I enunciate my words very clearly so that everybody will understand it. And then clear speech and short sentences, and that's non-linguistic supplementation. But the linguistic supplementations, as I said, synonyms and antonyms, and therefore story listening teacher is not a picture dictionary, but also a thesaurus.
Okay. Sorry, can you repeat the last part again? Because I'm
Okay.
trying to understand.
Teacher draws pictures, yeah?
Right.
And so it's a picture dictionary. She's a picture dictionary. She says, once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs, and she draws pictures of pigs, yeah? And she says, this first little pig was wearing a polka dot shirt, and she's polka dot shirt, and striped shirt, and the tartan check shirt. And so she introduces different words for the design of the fabric. Yeah, but anyway, so she does a picture dictionary. She's a picture dictionary, but also she's a thesaurus, meaning she's going to use synonyms and antonyms and also description of the words. She's a dictionary at the same time. It's not just telling a story.
Right.
Because she's an language teacher. She's not somebody who is an entertainer to the people who already understand English, the language.
Okay.
Because we're not the storytellers.
That way you make the language richer, like you said at the beginning, right? Exactly. Okay. And when we say when students become better at hearing stories, and when you start saying a lot of different things like, well, once upon a time there was a man. He was 75 years old. He was not young. He was an old man. If this gets a little bit boring for the advanced kids, so you don't have to do that when the kids get better at hearing stories. But at the beginning, it is very helpful. I would like the German teacher to do that for me. I don't want the German teacher to just tell me the story in German. I want her to be explaining and using different words about on the same topic. That would be very, very helpful for me because I don't hear German at all in Japan. Right. And so the Japanese kids don't hear English at all. They can get to hear English if they want to on a podcast or the YouTube, but they won't. They won't. They will just listen to things in Japanese because it's easier. Right. Yeah, but I guess with your stories, you're making, or in a way, you're making English interesting for them because they're interested in the story itself. So that's gonna, not force them. No, that's gonna trigger their interest. So they're
right. Yeah. See, I bring in an interesting story to begin with, and I say there were 3 sisters. The mother and father were dead. They were orphans. They were hungry, then they will go, okay, what's going to happen to these 3 girls type of thing. And so I'm going to bring in interesting story. It cannot be compelling stories all the time, right. But then you've got to tell the kids at the beginning of the course, this is a language class. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not a cartoonist. I'm going to just try to be, I am going to try to be best at delivering the story in a way that you can understand and enjoy. But if you don't complain, you know, because this is not a theater, this is a classroom. And so they all go, okay. Yeah, they understand it. And so as long as, you know, I try my best to have them understand and bring in an interesting story, they listen. Okay? And then when they understand, they listen. And so, yeah. When you talk about a dog who is going to get killed tomorrow by the owner, they'll listen what's going to happen to the dog, you know. They'll listen when they hear that the father wants to marry his daughter. What? You know, they'll listen. And so all you have to do is make it comprehensible, because you're bringing an interesting story to begin with.
Correct, because they want to know what's going to happen next, right? They're just
right. They want to know what's going to happen next, and so this is effective for everybody, as long as they understand. So you can adjust your language, and that's the reason why I say recorded videos, recorded podcasts, recorded this and that are not good, unless the students are already very good at it, like you listening to Plato's lecture on Plato, right, you know? Right. Yeah, but then, because but the students who are in your classroom are not at that level. If right. they are at that level, they're not in your class.
Right.
Yeah. Most people who are studying English in Japan are, I hate to say this, but elementary level. Even after they graduated from university.
Right.
Yeah. They might have passed entrance exams, but they are at the elementary level.
So if they watch a video on YouTube, more times than not, they're not going to understand what they're talking about.
No. Yeah. And so story listening teacher is so, I think, much kinder than the storytelling teacher, because we do everything for them to understand. You know, they don't have to look up at the dictionary. They don't have to ask around what it means. We'll make it so comprehensible that they understand it. Yeah. We even use Japanese. I even use Japanese sometimes.
Okay, like when they don't understand a specific word, a specific part of the story?
Or, you know, it gets to be too complicated to explain. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, then just use the Japanese.
Right, like, back to your example about abandon, that you explain the side story to help them understand, right? But sometimes you just, because I don't know, the concept is too abstract, or
right. Okay. Like devotion.
Devotion.
Yeah. How are you going to explain devotion? It's going to be a long story.
Right. Or hope, or
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, before I forget, so I leave the link to your YouTube channel, which you have channels. You have stories in English that you're creating. Yeah.
Yes, the stories that I tell there on that YouTube channel are for the people who already know some English, not for the zero beginners or startups. Or small children, you know. Those YouTube videos are actually for they can say high school kids, or maybe ninth grade, high school, college, senior adults, senior citizens, anybody, but not small children.
Okay. Yeah, and if you think about it, all we do as adults is start listening as well. Because when we just meet up with friends and family members, you know, we talk about what we did yesterday in sort of a story framework, right? So I went there, and guess what happened, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
everything is a story.
Right. It's like people connect story listening with like books for kids, but all we do is story listen all the time.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
whether you're watching a series, listening to a podcast, meeting up with friends, like I said.
Yeah.
Right.
The lectures are stories. When you go to university and you listen to a lecture, it's a story.
Yeah.
You know, talks about when Dr. Grushin talks about comprehensible input, it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then when he writes a paper, it's a story.
Yeah.
You know.
Correct. And how do you include reading into it? So do you read those stories later with them, or do you read other books with the class, or how do you go about reading?
Oh, good question. I tell a story, and when I tell a story, I cannot remember everything in my head. Yeah? Because there are words that I really want to introduce, because this word is going to really make the story interesting, like the word entice. Yeah.
So, your favorite on top of the
yeah. Well, anyway, okay. So when you read a text, because I didn't write it, you know, somebody who is very good in the language wrote that text. Yeah. And so there are so many rich language in there in the text. And then as a non-native speaker, as an English learner, I find those words very interesting. And I want to use those words to tell stories to the kids, because I want them to get better in the language also. And so what I do is I read it and I make a list of the words that I want to use. Okay, not to teach, but then I want to
for yourself. Yeah.
For me, right? I call it a prompter.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I call it a prompter. I don't call it a list of words. And then and then I prepare. And it takes about 4 stages or 4 steps to prepare this. So it's a little bit complicated, but I have this thing. But I also have a list of the words with the Japanese definitions for the students to take home too, if they want to. Okay, with the text, original text. Yeah, in case somebody may want to read it. Okay, and because I don't have any textbook, students might want to have a proof of the class. Yeah, and so I have a copy of a text and copy of these word list. And I used to give them to everybody. Okay, take them home. But what I've noticed was that some students don't even take them home. They leave them there on the table. And so I didn't want to spend the papers, you know, the ink and papers. And so I put it on the front of the classroom and say, if you want to take them, go ahead and take them home. And then what happens is, like, most kids don't take them home. Okay. Now, what I do is that means they're not interested. They heard the story. They don't want to read it again. Okay. They don't want to look at the word list again.
Yeah.
And only a few kids who feels like, well, I've got to have something from this classroom. I'm going to take, you know, or they really want to study. But there are only a few or several kids. But anyway, that's the reason why when I tell a story, I don't do anything. I just tell a story, and that's it. So when I have a 90-minute class, these days I'm telling 3 stories, about 30-minute long or 40-minute long, 20-minute long, so 3 different stories to one class, and that's it. And the interesting thing is, I tell a story for 30 minutes, and I say, the end, yeah? And then everybody goes, wow. And then I go, are you ready to tell? Are you ready to hear another story? And they go, yes. And I'm going, really? You know? And then I tell another story. And in the end, and then, are you ready to listen to another one? And they go, yes. I mean, these people, I'm teaching senior citizens. I shouldn't say senior adults, senior citizens. These people listen to 3 different stories for 90 minutes in English, and they don't get tired. And there's one man who takes my class, two of them, two classes on the same day. He comes to my class at 1:15 and takes 90-minute class, and then about a 10-minute break, and then he takes another class. So he listens to 6 different classes on Saturdays. And then I asked him, don't you get tired of listening to stories? 6 of them? And he goes, no. And I find it so satisfying that they don't, they want to listen.
Yeah.
They find it interesting.
Yeah.
They don't get tired of it. And I must be doing a pretty good job about it.
Yeah.
If they, yeah, that's what I think. I must be doing a pretty good job about telling stories because they don't get tired of it.
Right. And yeah, and then when, like, as a language learner yourself, when you understand what you're listening to, it sort of pumps you up a little bit, right? Like then of course it needs to be interesting, because otherwise in the long run, it's, they're gonna get tired sooner or later. But if they're interested in the stories and they understand what you're talking about, yeah, that's.
Yeah. And its stories are interesting. Lots of different topics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then so what they do is right now, because of this COVID thing, the pandemic thing,
Mm-hmm.
the library is closed. Nobody cannot go into the library. And so these, the people who are taking my class right now, they cannot read books. But what I do usually is that we all go to the library and we pick books, and then they take books home and read books. And then they write a little report on each book that they read, and they report to me. They tell me what books they read and if they understood it and if they liked it and things like that. We have a individual counseling, and then I tell them if they really want to get better quickly, if they want to do, for example, do well on the standardized test in a short time, I tell them what they should do is they should read about 100 to 150 pages per week. Yeah, now after all these years, it is possible that students read hundreds of books.
Yeah.
My students, my senior citizen students, they read about 150 books per year.
150 books per year?
Yeah.
So like one every 2 days, or nice.
Oh yeah. 150 books, 163 or something.
I guess they're short books, right?
Well, yeah, but it's not really short.
Yeah, I mean.
At the beginning, it's very short. Like a starter level, I start with the lowest level graded readers, and so at the beginning it's very short, but then it gets bigger and longer and more complex, and so like 30 pages, 50 pages, 80 pages, 100 pages, and then when they start reading upper level graded readers, they can start reading books for young adults. Yeah, and so they read 6,500 pages per year. And then when they read 6,500 pages per year, what happens is that their standardized test scores goes up.
Through the roof, yeah.
Yeah, without studying for the TOEIC, without studying for the TOEFL.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that not only does it help you truly acquire the language, but even within frameworks that are supposed to be grammar-based or form-based, you even do better, right? Just by
reading. Oh yeah. And then, let me tell you something. What happens is that sometimes students start thinking, oh, I did really well from reading books last year. Maybe this next year, I'm going to study for the TOEIC or TOEFL, and then I might be able to do even better. And so what happens is that they start studying, and then what happens is that their TOEIC score doesn't go up at all.
They even fall back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because and traditional grammar instruction actually gets in the way. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting.
It is. It is. Yeah.
You know, therefore, the subconscious acquisition is so much more powerful than conscious learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even close. Yeah,
right.
No. Yeah,
but then why don't people know this? And why do people keep studying?
That's our,
why do teachers keep teaching?
That's why we're here, right? Because the traditional grammar approach, as I like to call it, is just so dominant among adults, right? Because nobody would think of teaching their kids the native language that way. People would think they're crazy, right? But for some reason, with us adults, that's okay, right?
right.
So, yeah. But I think thanks to the internet as well, where ideas spread way faster, I think more and more people are starting to realize that this is different.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And what's nice about story listening is that it doesn't cost any money. Mm-hmm. Because the stories are on the internet for free download. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you can just, download the story. Yeah. And then the teacher can read it and make a prompter, and you go into the classroom and tell a story using comprehension aiding supplementation, linguistics, non-linguistic supplementation. Mm-hmm. And then the adjust the language for the kids who are sitting in front of you. And then, you do this every day, and then soon the kids will be doing really good.
Right. And you can even create stories yourself as a teacher.
Exactly. Yes.
Of course. I find it particularly interesting. I mean, I really like the creative process of creating stories. Not just to use them in the class, but in general. But I can actually, mix up both worlds, like the creating a story myself, because I enjoy the process of doing it, and then using it for language acquisition.
Yeah. That's good. Are you writing stories in Spanish or, Spanish or? Yeah.
I mean, I've got some that I create with my students in the class. I only teach adults. Okay.
Right.
But and then I'm starting to create stories, because
you are starting to write graded readers. Yeah, did you say?
Yeah, I'm starting to, like, I was thinking that, I mean, that's something that's in my mind. And I was thinking about you were talking about the prompt. I started recently, but I've there's some website that you can use. You have like story plots, and they give you like a main character, a secondary character, situation, so you create a story, right? I like that idea.
Well, you're not planning on making money, are you? With your
I mean, like, I'm on my YouTube channel. There's I'm creating stories in different ways, right? But the first one I created with this idea, it's on my YouTube channel, so it's up there.
No, what I was going to say was that can you donate those stories to Stories First Foundation?
So they can be used in the classroom? Yeah.
Yes. There is a non-profit organization called Stories First Foundation. Okay, I would like you to put that link too, maybe on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Stories First Foundation. That's a non-profit organization, and a few teachers, several teachers are not making stories, but making the adapting stories, simplifying the difficult stories, so that the beginning level students will have something to read.
Okay.
And like French and Spanish, I don't know if maybe they have lots of great readers in Spanish, but like German and French, they don't have very many easy graded readers. In English, they have lots of probably 2,000 different titles, but in French and German and Spanish, I don't know about Spanish, maybe they have lots of graded readers. But the thing is, graded readers are expensive. It costs like $6 to $9 a piece, a copy. And if you want to have 5,000 copies, it's a lot of money.
Right.
And so when you can have a free stories, that will be very helpful for teachers. Right. Like for the teachers who, I just got a message from somebody from Colombia saying that he's teaching small children English, but I'm sure the Colombian people, the small village, he said, so I just kind of selfishly imagined, but then poor village and poor children, and then those people don't have money to buy graded readers, don't have money to buy graded readers, and then they can download all these nice stories and then make copies and give it to the kids, right?
Right.
That's what
I'll check it out. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'll leave the link, like I said. And okay, so those are stories that then teachers can use in their class. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll have to make them kids friendly, like the stories, I mean, or
right.
No, it's not that when I'm going to write a story, I'm going to write crazy things, but just to keep in mind that kids might read it. So okay. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And and as a language learner yourself, is there any language you're looking to learn right now, or any resources that you use when learning a foreign language, apart from books, like you said? Or
no, you asked me, are there anything else besides story listening and books? Is that what you're
asking? We've been talking about your experience as a teacher for the most part, right? But as you as a language learner yourself, when you're learning German or French or whatever the language, is there any specific resource that you use as well, like listening to podcasts or reading books? Or
I like to listen to my colleague Catherine Schechtman. She does. She does a story listening in German. I love listening to her. Yeah, and then I like to read in German, but I don't have very many books in German. Graded readers. I'm sure there are out there, but I have not been able to find many of them.
Right.
But I would just do reading and listening. Yeah, I wouldn't go to a podcast because I wouldn't understand it. Sometimes I go to YouTube, and then there are the other day I was listening to a violinist. Her name was, I cannot remember. Her last name was Mutter. Sophie Mutter, and I really enjoyed listening to her German, but I didn't understand it much, and so that would be a waste of time, trying to listen, but don't understand it. And so I would, when I listen to Catherine, I understand everything. Yeah, I understand everything. So that's the kind of thing that I think it's an effective and efficient language acquisition experience.
Yeah.
So I would just listen to stories and read books.
Yeah, actually, I'm learning German, and that's how I got started with Catherine's stories. I watched them all of them.
You did? Very good. Yeah, I just talked to her today, and she said she's been doing some schoolwork. She's been going to a graduate school, but she said she's going to be done with it, and she will start doing story listening from this September. Okay. So that'll be good. Yeah,
actually, I'm gonna have her on the podcast as well, because I talked with her and she told me she was a bit busy now, but
she's working for her master's degree.
She'll be on. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, she's really good at it. She's really good at it. Yeah, because I was starting from scratch, actually. Of course, again, there are coordinates between English and German, right? But she uses pictures, and yeah, it's really nice.
She's a good. She draws very well.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, she's very good at that too.
Yeah,
and her voice, so clear.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I'll do it when she's on the podcast, but I'll leave the link to her YouTube channel as well. If there's anyone interested in learning German, learning German, that's a good starting point.
Yeah. Because she was teaching elementary school kids. So her YouTube videos, story listening YouTube videos is very easy for little children.
Correct. Okay. Is there anything else that we forgot to touch on, or anything else that you have in mind, Beniko?
Oh, I don't know. No, I just want the language learning or language acquisition to be easy. I just want language learning or acquisition to be easy for everybody. It has been so difficult for most people. Like in Japan, 2/3 of 8th graders or 7th graders, okay, they already think that their English is difficult. And I've read, there was a survey done by, I think it was the Ministry of Education in Japan. 95% of the high school kids feel that English is difficult, okay? Now, when 95% think it's difficult, the English education is a failure, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the way languages are taught in school, I understand why they think it's difficult.
Yeah, right. And so what I would like is I would like to completely change it. 95% will think it's great, you know, we are very good at it. 5% maybe not. Yeah. And then I think with story listening and guided self-selected reading, we can do this. I mean, I really do think we can completely change the scenery in a few years if we started using story listening and guided self-selected reading. I didn't tell you this, but you know, it's not extensive reading, but it's guided self-selected reading. We take the kids to the library and you tell them, this is a section where you should start. And that's the lowest level of the graded readers. And then the people will say, why do you have to have the kids who are still already good in you know, on the placement test? You know, he did very well on the placement test. Why can he not do with the like intermediate level graded readers? And I say, no, they should always go from the very, very lowest, because if he could really read the intermediate level, he can really go through really, really quickly from the starter level to the intermediate level. You know, so it doesn't matter. You know, you can always read easy books, right? And there's nothing wrong about reading easy books. Right. And so, lots of times extensive reading, they just have the students go to the library, and because they say self-selected reading, they think that the students should self-selected books, but the kids don't, even not kids, but even college students, they don't know which books to choose at the beginning, where to start. And so they need a teacher to show them, you know, these are the books that you can read now. And so out of 50 different titles, start 50 books.
That's really interesting, because you give them a pool of books and you let them decide.
Yes, that's self-selecting, but it's guided. It's guided self-selecting.
Yeah, so you give them a set of books that you know are appropriate for them, and then they decide depending on the topic or whatever they're interested in. Yeah.
Right. But then at the beginning, you do introduce, like, you know, this is a detective story, this is a love story, this is a mystery and stuff like that. And then, you know, they will look at the front page, they'll look at inside, they'll look at the illustrations, and then they start reading a little bit, and then they pick. Self-selecting is the most important part. When it is self-selecting, they take responsibility of their selection.
Yeah, true. Right, because it's not the teacher who forced them to read a book. Yeah,
when you pick a book, they will pick a book that they think they will be able to read. They will never check out a book that they think they will not be able to read it. Right. They will be careful about selecting. They'll take responsibility.
Yeah, they're responsible for their own choice. Right. Yeah, I've talked about this, not just for foreign languages, but for your own language, that when kids start reading for the first time in primary school, high school, I still remember my primary school and high school days, that when you start reading in language, in Spanish called language and literature class. So what the way most teachers do is they give you specific books that you have to read. So you don't even have a choice, first of all. And then you get tested on it.
Right.
So because that's the first experience for most people with reading. Right. No wonder adult people don't want to read.
Right.
Right. Because it looks like a chore, and it looks like something you're forced to do. It looks like work.
Right.
So whenever you're out of college, you see a book, don't give me that. So it's and then people are, they're amazed by the amount of people that don't read at all. I think it's a natural consequence of that. But if you give them 50, 100 books that you think they might be interested in, I'm talking about your native language now, but they're going to select the ones that they're interested in. And but that's a good point, that they take responsibility for it, because they actually does it. There's no teacher to blame there.
No. And then it's a good idea that you give them the books that's much lower than their reading level.
Okay.
Because it's easy. And then when it's easy, and if the story is interesting, they will think maybe they will think that they might be, they will think that they will want to read another one. Their hands will go, reach another book when it's easy and interesting. But if it's difficult, then they don't want to go.
Right. Yeah, you trigger that interest, and then it's
and so what I say is, every time they read a book, it should be I wouldn't say home run experience. It cannot be that good, but then pleasant, successful experience.
Yep.
And then they don't mind doing it if they, if you give them a book, they don't mind reading it if it's not that difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're an adult, you're gonna love reading.
Right.
Like, I mean, like I can't imagine a day without reading, to be honest. It's such a, I mean, not just for language learning itself, which is something that I do a lot of, but just for the sake of, just imagining the story that you're reading, or it's so pleasant for me.
That's good.
And
wonderful.
All right. So it's been a pleasure, Beniko.
Well, I hope I did okay.
More than okay, believe me. Because my goal as well is to help as many people as possible realize that language acquisition can be fun, and we can all do it.
Yeah, I've been talking to someone in Vietnam, and this person is as a missionary, a church missionary, and she wants to teach illiterate children. She said in Vietnam there are kids who don't go to school, but she wants to teach these kids English using story listening.
Right.
Isn't that nice?
It is.
Yeah, I really, think when I hear things like that, I feel like I want to go there and I want to do this with her. But and then I hear somebody, from Colombia saying that he's teaching children in a small village in Colombia, and then I feel like, gee, I want to go there and do it.
Awesome.
With story listening, anybody can do it once they learn how to do it. Okay. Once and if they can speak the language, anybody can do it. You don't have to go to college to do it. You don't have to have a teaching certificate. Anybody can. You don't have to be 25 years old. You can do it when you're 95. And all you have to do is a thick storybook or a computer which you can download stories, and a chalkboard and a chalk. Yep. And you can go anywhere in the world and start teaching the language.
Exactly. If all you care about is the people on the other side, you're going to find a way. You know what I mean? Like if all you care about is the people on the other side, your students, you're going to find a way to make it happen, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Right. And so I think, you know, I want people to understand what this is and start, you know, you can teach any language. You can teach heritage language. You can teach extinguishing or the near-death language. You can do this. You can do it in a bilingual education. You can do it in a foreign language, second language, anywhere. And I've heard they do this in a sign language. They use story listening to sign language. There is a man in Oregon who does that. Okay. I got to know someone who is teaching Latin using story listening.
Yeah. I need to check that out. The sign language one. That sounds interesting. Yeah.
And so, and then you can change the how do you say this, scenery of the language teaching in a few years, if people start using story listening, and then many people, you know, young people will be able to read and listen, and when they can read and listen, they will be able to talk.
Yeah, that'll come later. Yeah.
I mean, you know, at the school they teach like how to ask a question, how to you know, the decline invitation, how to complain, and all that stuff. And then you never use those sentences in your life, right? And then they'll teach you how to you know, what to say at the restaurant, what to say at the front desk at the hotel, what to say at the train station, what to say this and what to say that and stuff like that. But things like that, if you listen to 400 stories, you know, and if you read, I mean, hundreds books, those people will be able to say, could you please tell me where the station is, you know, how to get the station. They will be able to say, can I try this on? You know, how much is this? Right. They don't have to spend time to practice those sentences.
Right. Because they're going to come up naturally in those stories, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And because it's within the context of a story, they're not going to be thinking, they're not going to be focusing on form. Because when you tell them, this is what you should say in a restaurant, they're thinking form. Right. But if within the context of a story, one of the characters go to a restaurant because he's meeting an old friend of hers, you know, and she asks the waiter, can I have whatever, you know, they're going to be listening to those same structures that you want them to learn, but because they're thinking about the story as opposed to the words or the language itself, they're actually going to acquire them. Which is ironic, but it's great.
Right. So.
All right. So yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For being on. I really enjoyed it.
I did too. I hope no, I didn't insult anybody.
No. Yeah, I think a lot of people will enjoy this. Like, you know, this is important to change people's perspective on language acquisition.
Yeah. We don't need any pre-teaching of vocabulary. We don't need to do comprehension questions. We don't have to do, or we shouldn't do any giving them any test. We should not do error correction. You just give them a comprehensible, interesting, rich, and abundant input with low affective filter.
There you go. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.